Okay, with this new season of videos, I need something fresh. I could do one of my many Transformers, some plush, this creepy Fred Flintstone toy I found. I could also get something new, I suppose, but I don't want to spend too much money. I know! We're going to the dollar store, baby! You know, it must be said, there's always something fun about going to a discount shop. Whether it be a thrift store, something like Ross's, or a dollar store, there's something magical about finding something in there. There's a chance you could find some genuinely great deals on stuff. Or you'll find some of the strangest crap you've ever seen. Every so often I'll venture out into one of these places and pick up some odd wares for cheap. And for today's video, I bought as much as I could for under $10, not including random snacks I got my hands on. Each item was about $1.25. Damn you, inflation! Toy number one is one from an actual brand you might have heard of with Kitty in My Pocket, a spin-off of Puppy in My Pocket. Puppy in My Pocket was a line of miniature figurines of dogs and cats and was popular enough to get a cartoon series with really janky animation. Probably because it turned out to have been outsourced to North Korean sweatshops. Glad to see that doesn't happen anymore. No. Oh no. Anyhow, on the back we got some cute kittens. We can see they have a YouTube ad for some short cartoons. Let's actually have a look.
Here comes Mom! She's gonna let us meet the babies!
I miss the North Korean animation. We also have a roster of your kittens with such names as Bandit, Ace, Melly, Pancake, Pickles, and Paul Orndorff. Personally, give me Pickles or Pancake because their names are so stupid, they're brilliant. Boing! It's not Pickles or Pancake, I'm angry! This is Bandit, and his fun gimmick is to cause the exposure to go wild. So let me just fix that. As far as a little figurine, it's cute enough. It has flocking, which is that furry texture you can get on small figures, which is nice, but the flocking isn't the softest. Also, why does it have a hole there, Moving on! Next up on this tour of Discount Delights is a cap shoot. As far as toy guns go, it's actually shaped fairly realistically, though the colors are naturally garish due to US law, which sometimes applies or not. I don't know, it's weird. Guns, how come third-party Transformers get away with it? Someone help me there? I do love the comically small barrel though. I know snub-nosed revolvers are a thing, but it makes me laugh every time. It's so wimpy looking. Also, I love the giant warning on the back telling you not to whip this thing out in public. I mean, yeah, don't point plastic guns out in public at strangers. People have died from doing that. It just gives me the image of someone trying to rob a store with this little pea shooter. Oh wait, that's kind of actually happened. But now I got my gun, so let's open fire. What? Yep, this thing has no caps. It's a completely empty husk, worded just right so that they don't tell you it has no caps. The liberals didn't come for our guns, they came for our bullets. Lame. Well, after that disappointment, we got the bane of discount toys, fake Lego with Make It blocks. Now, let me make it clear, I love Lego, but even I know how stupidly expensive it can get. However, there is a lot that goes into engineering Lego sets so that everything connects well. Pieces can be used for not just what they intended, and it's stable. And that's something unfortunately a lot of fake Lego fail at. I opted to pick up the crane mostly because a lot of the other vehicles look a bit blocky, for lack of a better word. Is that Mr. Incredible's car? I've had a lot of bad experiences with fake Legos over the years, so I was prepared for some cheap crap. But you know what? This is really impressive for $1.25. The wheels turn well, there's no sprue, it's even engineered pretty well, so shaking it about and squeezing it doesn't break it. I also quite enjoyed the use of gray grill bits as the side step. I can't be the only one who pretended these bits were bacon growing up, right? Now we have a plush toy with fuzzy friends. Cheap plush can go wrong in so many ways. Cheap materials, weird design, and being stuffed full of asbestos. Is cotton or spider eggs really that expensive? We have a reindeer here with an odd design. The body is fine and all, but it has these very stumpy limbs that look shriveled up and kinda sad. Poor little lad ain't gonna be walking anytime soon. It's especially noticeable with his antlers where they're so wimpy and floppy. Hang on, is this supposed to be a dog now that I think about it? What is this creature? You know how One Piece has been overly simplifying Chopper over the years? turning him from a cute chubby reindeer into this miniature mascot. This is the final step of that evolution. Just give him a hat and there we go. It's a shame because the quality of the material is still very soft and huggable. I just don't get it. What is it? Also, it doesn't even have a tail. Micro Collection Skeletor, or He-Man, I guess, according to the box. Another common staple of dollar stores in recent years are these micro-sized statues of various franchises. I've seen a lot from Transformers to Disney to WWE, and now we go a little old school with Masters of the Universe. And it must be said, for less than the cost of approximately one Butterfinger bar, this is really nicely done. The proportions are accurate to the character, the pose is good fun with him doing the claw hand, even the paint detailing on his face is pretty spot on, and he got that ass. This is so far the pick of the litter for me. Considering this is a 15th of the price of a Funko Pop, and with 15 times the quality, I love it. You know what, Skeletor? You can sit proudly on my shelf. Just be careful of Fred. And now we got a girl's doll here with anime doll. There are plenty of girls' toys for sale at Dollar Tree, including outfits, but I couldn't find any of their Barbie ripoffs. So instead, we have their attempt at an anime figurine with their Mansa Kodama. Wait, is that supposed to be manga? Why is the N randomly capitalized? Graphic design is my passion. So there are 3 dolls in this range, and I shall dub them as such. Not Hatsune Miku, the girl from the outraged feminist meme, and that girl from the Bobbleheads movie. Oh god, there's lore. Since the ancient times, the Japanese have admired and respected their eldest trees. This may sound silly to you. Many believe their tree trunks are home to loving spirits with great power to do good. The air they breathe, the rainwater they drink, have become increasingly polluted. Many of the mightiest have grown weak and frail, so the Council of Elders, made up of the oldest and wisest trees, put their thoughts to a vote. They decided the mightiest would leave the forest and transform themselves into humans. They would use their incredible powers to convince the world to stop harming them. Welcome to the exciting world of Kodama, where legendary spirits are born from the trees. Meet the first of our peaceful spirits and let the adventures begin. Considering one of these tree spirits went off to be a rock star, I don't think the forest is gonna be okay. God, what the hell? Oh my god! The hair is made of rubber and it's meant to be swapped around, which is nice, but oh, this is the worst feeling toy so far. The head is a soft plastic and is really easy to warp, and it's, oh god, stop that. This thing is so cheap in general, with dirt out of the box, scratched off paint, obvious sprue bits, and loose joints. And this thing was brand new. At least it comes with this magic stick accessory, which she really doesn't want to hold. And she's posed with it in a way where it was clearly supposed to be a microphone at first, given the others have a very pop star vibe with their accessories. And as a result, her only poses she can do is perform a bit of magic and have very distressing worldviews. And the final figure is, fiddly enough, Final Faction, our boys' toy. Enough of these girly toys. Oh, you're so girly. Bleh. I opted for the lady, however, because I didn't want to be sexist. On the back, we have a list of the other characters, which includes 3 other G.I. Joe wannabes and some kick-ass aliens that I couldn't find. We have a dull plot verb and, oh snap, a cartoon! And this one, in comparison to Pussy in My Pocket, is a lot more watchable. Not bad for a time figure that costs less than a bottle of Coca-Cola. Do we even have an economy anymore? Well done, 4-Star Group. I guess Team 4-Star had to do something after canceling Boo Saga Abridged, until they showed they could totally have done it. Moving on. This here is shipped from the mountains of East Asia. Which ones? The Himalayas? Mount Fuji? The Gobi? The Shiashia Banging pick? Who knows? And you know what? For the price, this might be the most bang for your buck as far as figures go. The articulation is very basic, nowhere near G.I. Joe figures, which these are clearly inspired by. But for $1, you can't complain. The paint's really good and precise. I adore the simple dot eye. She comes with these big piss-off katanas, as well as a solid holder for them. It does have some obvious screws, and god damn! RC, you are no longer the dumpy champion on this channel. But yeah, this is a really nice figure for the price, absolutely clearing a lot of the other bootleg military figures you can find out there. This one at least has a human face. Also, with the aliens and the robots, you can potentially build a large army with them. How do I know this? Because that's exactly what people have been doing. Whole alien armies for less than 20 bucks. In fact, the entire range here can be collected for less than 15 bucks, not including vehicles or weapons packs. The entire range of Final Faction can be collected for less than eating at Five Guys. And you won't get diarrhea from them. And there we go, 7 toys from Dollar Tree. Not pictured as the gun because screw that thing. But overall, I'm quite pleased with what I got for the money. And some of them are even charming in a weird kind of way. And these aren't even the craziest things I've seen at Dollar Tree. I found proper action figures and full retail video games on clearance even. I'll do another one of these videos sometime, probably with discount stores with a lot more going on. But what about you? Do you have any memories of shopping for discount toys? And if so, what were they? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe and stop doing that. Right about now, it's time to rock with the Freaking Bucket Bumbo. Right about now, it's time to rock with the Freaking Bucket Bumbo.
Bum to the bum to the bum to the bass. Bum to the bum to the bumbo. Bum to the bum to the bum to the.
Not too long ago, I went to Universal Studios Hollywood in California with my girlfriend. Given I live down in Southern California, I've had the chance to go to a couple of the big theme parks, which is surreal for me, formerly coming from Chicago, where our only big theme park was Six Flags Great America. It was actually a little bit of a misty morning when we got there, which is great because that meant less lines, so we had the chance to experience almost all the rides. And I must say, even beyond just the rides, I'm always amazed by Universal Studios theming. Maybe they don't have the same thrill rides as something like Six Flags, but come on, where else am I gonna get bullied by Megatron?
Where are you from, though? Still don't care. Chicago, huh? City I already burned down in my battle with Prime. To the best in the world, I'm on the way.
Universal Studio Tour, always a classic. Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, fantastic. Mario Kart, one of the most inventive dark rides I've ever been on. The Simpsons ride, really fun. But God, it was painful. What do you mean this sandwich is 20 bucks? Despicable Me Minions Mayhem, surprisingly fun. Secret Life of Pets, adorable. Flight of the Hippogriff, that was okay, I guess. Fast and the Furious, it's not ready yet. Kung Fu Panda, we didn't go on it. The Mummy, surprisingly terrifying. Waterworld Stunt Show, spectacular. The Jurassic World River Ride, oh, he's gonna eat us. He's gonna eat us. He's gonna.
Was that the bite of it?
But my favorite, as you'd imagine, was the 4D Transformers ride, Battle for the Allspark. Which I knew I was gonna love because, hey, Transformers, but I was not ready for how much I loved it. Everything was incredible about this ride, from the immersive queue experience where your new soldier recruits at a military base, which is especially hilarious as there were children on the ride, meaning we have child soldiers fighting with the Transformers. But then you go on the ride and it's an incredible experience with the ride car twisting and turning, brilliant 3D effects, crunchy sound design, all the more impressive when you look behind the scenes and see it's a mostly stationary car. But the way it's set up is so dang immersive and oh my god, we're gonna fall, someone help us! It was amazing and worth the triple low. And naturally the gift shop was full of Transformers goodies. Is he dabbing? I was trying to find a figure of Evac, who's the robot you ride on the ride, but he hasn't been sold in years and is quite expensive now. So I got this Bumblebee popcorn bucket. Yes, this is a popcorn bucket. So from here on out, I shall dub him Bumble Bucket. Yeah, some of you might be surprised to hear unless you've read the title of the video, but yes, this thing's main purpose is storing food. But it doesn't seem that way, does it? For one, it's huge. It's larger than a lot of figures I have. But then again, we seem to be in the age of popcorn buckets. At Universal, I saw a lot of funky looking popcorn buckets or drink cups for sale, and of course, we have all those new movie theater popcorn buckets such as that Dune 2 one, which I have censored for Japanese viewing. But it's one thing to be able to drink from Bart Simpson's skull. It's another to give this thing articulation. It's not much, but he can move his arms and legs a bit, meaning I can give this thing a big ol' hug because he's so cute. Chibified designs run a fine line between being cute to outright disgusting. And thankfully, Bumblebee here passed the test. It's based on his design from the 2017 movie, already a great choice given the rounder proportion of Bee's design in that movie, and they thankfully have given him all his distinguishing features, like his big old blue eyes, his rabbity looking ears, and his weird pacifier mouth thing. You know, I never realized how weird that was until I started writing this script.
Shock.
He also has a giant Autobot symbol on his head, which activates the light feature, just in case you needed a flashlight while having your midnight snackings. He also comes with this giant lanyard, which is thankfully removable as it's big and kinda ugly when strapped to him. Question, when you do use this as a bucket, why would you want something this big and detailed dangling across your purse as you're moving around the theme park bumping into other people? And you know what? It wasn't even the most impractical bucket I saw. I saw this admittedly sweet Mario Kart bucket, which, while good, does bring up the question, how good is this thing as an actual bucket? After all, it's not advertised as a simple chibi figure, though it is better than any Funko Pops of Bumblebee out there. Food is meant to be placed inside his skull, and as far as his munchin' and crunchin's chamber, it measures about 5 inches tall, 4.5 inches wide, which is not a small amount of popcorn, but I'll be honest, isn't a lot. For those living in Chicago, that's about 2 or 3 bags worth of delicious Okie Dokies cheesy popcorn. And quite frankly, I'm gonna need way more Okie Dokies to be happy. Why can't I find them here? But hey, we could put other delicious snacks in there. We could put graham crackers, cereal, Lego Simpsons, juicy ham steaks, and to rip off another toy reviewer, Bumblebeans. Though I don't recommend getting this thing too dirty because it's hand wash only. Understandable given the electric inside it, so putting inside a dishwasher. So where do I stand on this thing? As a collectible, it's pretty dang cool, adorable, and easily recognizable as the character. Perfect for cradling like a baby, and perfectly affordable for a large-scale collectible. As a popcorn bucket, which, you know, is what it's sold as, it's pretty impractical. All I can think of when I see this thing is that joke from The Simpsons with the bottle that looks like a soldier, which, you know, add that to the clickbaitable list of Simpsons predictions. On the other hand, the fact that his brains open up essentially is pretty funny. I think overall, I'm gonna give this thing 3.5 Jiffy Pop bags out of 5. While no doubt fun and certainly a novel approach, it's kind of impractical compared to other ways of eating popcorn. But you're not here for practicality, you're here for the iconic little bee character. And in that regard, it's gonna be quite useful for me as I work on these videos. Well, what do you think of this little fella? What would you put in his head? Let me know in the comments, please subscribe, and did you know there's a full-on Transformers land in Universal Beijing? Well, if I'm gonna do a digital circus video, I'm gonna do it right.
Wow, look at that! It's Pomni, everyone! I think she has a gift. Wow. Ooh, an egg! What's in it? Hooray! It's a healthy snack! Eat up, Pomni! Eat up! Eat up, Pomni! Eat up! Eat up! Eat up!
What crap was that? Anyways, the Amazing Digital Circus is pretty impressive if you think about it. It's not even been a year and yet it's already had quite the impact on pop culture. And I'm not just talking about YouTube kids horror like my opening or the surprising amount of lewd material which I can't show for obvious reasons. You think Kane got good mouth game since he's all mouth? As a general rule, while there is independent animation that's done well on YouTube, it's typically very safe, episodic content. Stuff like blogs like Jada Animation or Odd One Is Out, or parodies like Flash Gets or Meat Canyon.
But he hates science. He's like me. He's into Meat Canyon videos.
I hate this world! Not to disparage those creators, but they kind of developed a safe zone, never really doing anything big, all things considered. And I know there have been plenty of times when YouTubers tried to go bigger and it didn't really work out, but I think it's better to try and fail than to just do the same thing over and over again. So it's kind of nice to see a very creative, ambitious project not only do incredibly well view-wise, but also reach a point where I'll randomly see the characters on the street.
There she is! It's Pomni! Hey!
There's all kinds of merchandise, and not just the usual Shark Robot t-shirt that dies after washing it a few times. I mean enough stuff that managed to fill up a pop-up store in Japan. Keychains, clothes, candy, bags, dildos, figurines, and the topic of today's video, plushies. Sure, plenty of other YouTube channels have had plushies. I mean, what is going to top the plushie of Linkara? Buy one now to reenact his revenge fantasies against the Only Plays crew. But the plushies for Digital Circus are remarkably high quality, with some even having play features. Pomni here is probably the cream of the crop of the plushies line. She's been chibified, but not to an obnoxious level, making her perfectly cradleable, but also has an adorable face that's probably having an existential crisis, trying to make sense of everything. The doll is made out of soft cotton or fabric, making it soft enough that you can hug her real tight. Going back to the face, all of the features are printed on or patched on, which I have heard some people complain about for plushies overall, but I don't mind it. Plushies like this tend to last longer even if they lack the depth of similar plush. Though thankfully, Pomni as a character has a pretty flat face, so no need to worry there. They did try to give her some depth on her hair, which I don't think actually works all that well. This is where making the hat a separate piece with the side sewn on could have made the effect work a bit better. Whereas at the moment, it kind of looks like she stuck bits of toffee on her forehead. It also means the side of her hair looks less like side bangs and more like she's got a pair of side bangs. Though her hat has some little baubles on them, so that more than makes up for it. Now, while the hair is a small critique, that does bring us to the bigger critique, and that's the price. This thing is not cheap at $35. Now, to be fair, for the size range, that is cheaper than some other plushies, but that still is a good chunk of change. For that money, you could buy at least 2 emotional support nuggets. But there's still the factor of, actually go back. What the hell are these? What makes these nuggets qualify for handling a mental crisis? Are they like those toys that are generic stuffed toys with just the word sensory attached to them to make them seem more sophisticated? I don't trust these nuggets, certainly not with children. I read the Daily Mirror, you sick bastards. The hell am I even talking about? So while Pomni here is not a bad deal in comparison, unfortunately, bootlegs for the Amazing Digital Circus are very prominent. Look up Digital Circus plush on Amazon and there are a ton of knockoffs, including some of interesting quality. But I don't doubt that people are going to be lured in by them simply because, hey, cheap. But I seriously encourage people not to get them. Not just because of the designs or even the fact that these aren't by the main company. The real toys are independently financed by the show's creators and help fund the show. So I think they do deserve your proper support. But more so, there are actual dangers within the material in knockoff plush, particularly from China. Ignoring the obvious labor issues, there have been reports of toxic dye used in knockoff plush to asbestos or similar material being found inside the plush. And given Digital Circus's popularity with young kids, there is the potential for children coming across dangerous material and having some serious health effects. So please, save up your money and get the real deal. Especially because overall, it's really nice both as a plush toy and a nice little collectible from the show. Overall, I give it 4 copies of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream out of 5, which, if you've never played it, go check it out. It's one of the inspirations of the show. Nothing like something that's popular with kids being inspired by a post-apocalyptic story where people are tortured constantly by a living AI they created, which puts them through simulations of their own personal hell with things like human sacrifice, sexual trauma, sexual identity, the Cold War, and the Holocaust. Imagine the YouTube Kids video about that one! Oh no, Ellen is in the yellow room. Not the yellow room, it's like pee-pee. Yay, pee-pee.
If you were to be stranded on an island, and you could pick between eating only Doritos or drinking only Mountain Dew, what would you pick?
I think you got to have the liquid, right? You got to have the to survive.
Well,
if I got the munchies, then I'd go right onto the Doritos.
Yeah.
The Michael Bay Transformers. In preparation for Transformers 1, I had myself a bit of a rewatch of all the live-action movies. And it's funny how all over the place the series is. The first movie is a genuinely great sci-fi action blockbuster with amazing effects, big action scenes, and a lot of surprisingly inventive ideas. Revenge of the Fallen is a hilarious mess of bizarre pacing, terrible comic relief, and writing. Dark on the Moon is better, and somehow worse. Age of Extinction is the worst thing ever. And The Last Night is slightly better, but still awful, and so bad, they rebooted it with the genuinely great Bumblebee, which showed plenty of potential for the series' future. Only for Rise of the Beast to be aggressively mid. Over the course of these films, I grew to appreciate a lot about them. There's a weird passion with them that's undeniable. They feel, for the most part, like an actual creator with a vision worked on them. It's just this creator's vision was clouded by explosions, cool cars, and America. I've always said I'll take going all out and coming out rough, rather than trying to play it safe and ending up dull. At least you know the name Michael Bay, who directed most of the recent Marvel movies, but probably the aspect that remains the most famous and infamous is the design language of the Transformers. Some characters are remarkably loyal to their G1 and toy counterparts, some are completely different. Some designs are so good they've become an iconic depiction of the character. others are Skids and Mudflap. I must admit, the only movie figure I had any real interest in at first was the Devastator from Studio Series. One day I'll reveal you, my dear. And since then, I've started collecting Studio Series movie figures nonstop. And, is this healthy? Do I need help? Leader Class Megatron, what do I do? Yeah, there's no getting around it. I adore these things. Don't get me wrong, the Studio Series figures for the 86 movie are fantastic too, with their great posing and cartoon accurate colors. But something about seeing these incredibly detailed designs rendered like this, I don't know what to tell you. It tickles my little monkey brain. I wanted to pick a perfect figure to represent the Bayverse, both everything great and everything ridiculous about it. And after much prattling on, here's Voyager class movie Starscream. Starscream is one of the most iconic Transformers ever, and there are very few times they strayed away from his classic look and personality. Whether he's an angsty boy, a large boy, a long boy, or a fruity boy, Starscream's design has been pretty consistent. The biggest design change I think I've ever seen for him is they gave him a face mask in Beast Wars 2. So come late 2006 and early 2007, we got some leaked concept art, and the reaction is pretty mixed. Some art was well received, others not so much. And Starscream was one of the most controversial designs. Come the final movie, seeing these characters in motion put a lot of fears to rest, as well as a lot of the improvements to designs such as tiny-faced Megatron. But Starscream was still pretty polarizing. You stand him next to a traditional figure of Starscream and it's practically not the same character, save for the wings. Everyone made fun of his design, from his weird face to his infamous Dorito body, and that's 100% reflected here. Studio Series aims for screen accuracy, and they do a great job, for the most part. And looking at Starscream here, they did an amazing job replicating what was on the screen. The detail on this figure is astonishing. There's so much texture on this thing with all sorts of tech lines and a layered look of the Bayformers. The big thing with Bayformers is their armored look with an underlying endoskeleton. Starscream is one of the clearest examples of that. There's so much depth to him, visually, not character-wise sadly. You can see his endoskeleton peer through his F-22 fighter armor. Also, bonus points for the cockpit with the chair. We need more of that, dang it. And say what you will about the Dorito body, it does provide a standout look. And in the movie, it makes for a very dynamic character's design, like with that cool mid-air transformation he does, leaping about and flying with those big funky chicken legs. I have a roommate who can't stand this design, calling it very ugly and unreflective of the character. I disagree. Kinda. It does, in a weird way, represent Starscream. There's a snake-like quality to the face, almost sniveling. And his large chest and body, contrasting his tiny limbs, shows that he's confident, but ultimately weak. And as for ugly, well, she's just flat wrong. Articulation is mostly good. You have quite excellent arm, head, hand, and leg articulations, being very posable. But there's no waist articulation sadly, though I don't know how you would make it work with this design. And a character like this could have really used some ankle pivots to help those chicken legs stand. I do love the wrist articulation though. It allows the gun to lock back in. Oh, and another accessory with Studio Series figures are these cardboard backdrops that also double as the box inlay. They look pretty cool, but ultimately aren't the best. I have a green screen, I could just put in my own backgrounds. The transformation is pretty dang fun. Transformers that involve a lot of unfolding can be a massive pain, ahem. But the way Starscream unfolds is as if his body actually merges into his plane form, and it feels really good to push everything together. And the final result is this quite handsome F-22 fighter jet that just looks marvelous. It perfectly captures what we saw on the screen. And also is just a little bit dirty looking, which gives it more of a textured look while not overdoing it like Siege did, which I really like. Also, love the Decepticon Air Force symbol. Such a nice touch. It feels good to display and play with, which is exactly what I'm looking for with my Transformer. Even the underside is quite nice, but it feels a lot better hidden than a lot of other planes or flying Transformers. This guy at least hides his arms. The weapon storage is a little odd though. It's supposed to be like a flame bursting out of the back effect, but it kinda looks like an angry face underneath, especially with those boosters looking like big ol' eyes. But regardless, it's a grand old time. Honestly speaking, yeah, it's a weird design, but this figure kinda helped me to appreciate Dorito Scream and helped me to realize what I love about the Bayverse designs. They do feel the most transformative. I don't think there are any cases of tummy time Transformers, and even the ones that kinda do it way better than most. Studio Series movie figures feel like they are a real-world vehicle coming to life. Not that there's anything wrong with the ones that are a bit more like the cartoon or get a bit more sci-fi. I wouldn't collect those figures as well if I felt that way. But I do find myself loving these transformations more and more. They're complex, but satisfying. I love them so much. I'm giving this figure 4.5 Mountain Dews out of 5. Yeah, I'm looking for the Mountain Dew robot too. So question, what do you think of the Bayverse designs? Do you have any favorites, any you hate? Let me know in the comments and please subscribe. And all hail your Dorito Pope! The movie Starscream is so cool. I don't care what anybody ever says, I love him.
Since the dawn of Primus, Cybertronians needed a leader to guide them, to be a voice for what Primus stands for, to carry the matrix of leadership, whether it be to represent hope and optimism, courage and ingenuity, knowledge and nature. They have all been chosen to carry the mantle of pride. And Starsaber can apparently fuck off because no one in America knows who he is.
So I was in Target a while back checking out the Transformers for sale. Moving past the unsold Earthspark, Rise of the Beast toys, and disappointing Transformers 1 toys, I found this big lad. Power of the Primes, Optimus Prime. Seems like to tie into the release of Transformers 1, Hasbro has opted to re-release this figure. It's a bit of a surprise given he's, 6 years old at this point? Why re-release him now? Well, let's bring up a little history. Back to the mid-2010s with the Prime Wars. A big-scale 3-part event with lots of big promises, including a remarkably disappointing animated series. There was the Combiner Wars, Titan's Return, and Power of the Primes. And of the three, the Primes wasn't quite as big as the other two. And it's no surprise, Combiner Wars brought back a ton of combiners who haven't had toys for years, as well as a big old Titan-class Devastator that put the Titan-class properly on the map more than that overhyped yoga instructor Metroplex could. And Titan's Return brought back two fan favorites as Titan-class figures with the wonderful return of Headmasters, albeit now called Titan Masters. But Power of the Primes was mostly just bringing back a lot of older characters, some combining gimmicks, and the Prime Masters, which, However, the leader class figures were a little more interesting, the so-called evolution figures, where essentially they were a leader class figure of themselves at their full power, and their versions before they became the big man on campus. And I gotta say, I kinda love them, but more on that in a bit. Let's look at this Fab 3, and why don't we do this in chronological order.
Boobies.
Orion Pax was a simple dock worker, going about his days not a care in the world with his girlfriend Ariel. However, there was an uprising by the Cybertronian military and High Guard, resulting in civil war with him and Ariel being gravely injured. They are rebuilt by the Elder Alpha Trion and given the Matrix of Leadership to lead the other Autobots in these dark times. Thus he becomes Optimus Prime, the greatest leader of the Autobots during the multi-million-year Civil War. And if you want to see a more in-depth version of this story, go see Transformers 1. Which this figure was re-released to tie into, no doubt, seeing as it has both figures of Orion and Optimus. But regardless of adaptation, Optimus remains the face of the franchise. He's a father to his men, very kind and compassionate, but also surprisingly stern and knows how to throw down. He's not afraid to kill, but ultimately knows not to let violence be a driving force in the world. And here he is, the first depiction of Orion Pax. Already with this figure, there's quite a bit of novelty factor, because there haven't been a lot of real figures of Orion Pax, just a lot of figures that are clearly still Optimus. This, however, is definitely Orion Pax when he was just focused on making out with his girlfriend, so he's not this big mighty figure, but he's not supposed to be. And for what you get, it's pretty dang cool. He stands as a taller, almost Voyager scale figure, with just the right amount of details to be interesting, but still look very clean like his cartoon counterpart. I do love his kind of blank expression. Bro really has no idea what he's in for. He looks really nice, until you get to the back. Yeah, Orion Pax is Paxton a lot back there. The entire truck front is a big old backpack for him. But hey, maybe he's just carrying that stuff around the docks, I guess. Does it bother me? A bit, yeah. But I can't act like it ruins it. because even the articulation is okay for a figure that's essentially an accessory. No waist articulation, sadly, but you do have solid head, arm, shoulder, knee, and leg articulation. You can pose this guy okay, even if his limbs like to pop off sometimes. The truck mode on its own is, not ideal. Like, that backpack was doing some heavy lifting with the truck face, because while the front in certain angles look alright, the more of the back you get, the worse it gets. It just looks so messy, especially with Orion's head just jammed between his legs. Like, I want to be impressed they tried to take this roundy boy into a truck, but it needed some work. It's time to bring in the trailer. And to be fair, with the trailer attached, it does help a fair bit. It gives it some much needed presence and at least helps to cover up Orion's head. And I do dig the multicolored look of it with that big stripe on the side. The red arms look surprisingly kind of clean up there, and I will say, while I prefer direct plastic transfers, those foil stickers do look rather nice. It helps that I didn't have to apply them. Certainly a better trailer than Dark of the Moon Optimus. Wow, weapon storage. Neat. The transformation into full-bodied Optimus Prime is pretty dang fun. The truck is shell forming essentially, but unlike a lot of other shell formers, this one doesn't feel cumbersome or limited. In fact, it feels kind of awesome to open up this robot and bam, there's Optimus's hollow body. And Optimus Prime himself, I mean, just look at this beauty. There have been plenty of Primes over the years, some debatably better than this, but this, to me, this figure evokes Prime in a way not a lot of other figures can. Everything is just right to me. The proportions are perfect, the colors are striking, the head sculpt is top notch. It's just Prime, no way around it. I honestly prefer this visually to a lot of masterpiece figures of Optimus, which yes, are probably higher quality and more posable, but something just feels right about him. It feels chunky and strong. Even the trailer bits on his body I think actually do add a nice twist to the design, giving him a whole paneled samurai look. Do I wish it could pose a bit more? Yes, it's just begging for a waist whip. But everything else is still pretty posable and mighty that it's able to overcome it. Even Orion packs hang around on the back there. I thought it would bother me more, but thanks to keeping most of the blue on the back, it helps to mask it. Though those arms are still hanging out. Is this the best Optimus Prime ever made? Probably not. But it's one of my personal favorites, if not my all-time favorite. Whenever I see him, I see that father to his men. He looks like the type that have war stories. He's the character we all know and love. And with that, let's move on to a character who some love and some hate.
Gross.
Introduced in Transformers the movie, we have Hot Rod. A hot-headed young lad, Hot Rod was never one for serious work, preferring to spend his days having fun with Daniel. However, with the death of Optimus Prime, the Autobots needed a new leader, and the Matrix of Leadership ended up choosing him to lead the Autobots in their darkest hour, becoming Rodimus Prime. Now, Rodimus was clearly not ready to become leader. He's brash, very reliant on others to guide him, and not exactly tactful.
Let's do it!
Didn't you want to say something about concord and tranquility in the galaxy?
Give me a break.
But he can be quite resourceful when push comes to shove, a good friend to his crew, and ultimately, he does prove himself towards the end of his run. He's a deeply flawed character, but in the end, a good leader. Compared to Orion packs, there have been no shortages of Hot Rod figures out there.
Oh no.
So at first, Hot Rod seems to be at a disadvantage. But honestly, there's still plenty to love here, even in comparison to his legacy figure, which aims for cartoon accuracy like this guy does. And while that's probably an overall better figure, this one isn't far off in a lot of ways. I actually prefer Rodimus's boots here for one. Something about the black on red is a lot more popping than Legacy's gray on red. For the time, this actually was one of the more accurate to the cartoon Hot Rods while taking some cues from his G1 toy. He'd honestly make a pretty nice Classics figure. In fact, I actually prefer this to his Classics figure, which was an overly bulky brute. Not too keen on the face sculpt though, it's a bit too angry for Hot Rod at this stage, and the chin goatee thing is a bit too pronounced. I always imagine Hot Rod with a big naughty smile, and this stern expression just doesn't work for me. Ooh, this car mode. I love this thing. This is what helps Hot Rod feel more like a standalone figure to me. This car is practically almost perfect, almost completely mimicking his on-screen car. Is his spoiler a bit big? Yes. Jealous? Could he have used that engine in the front? Probably, even though there's a cab for it. But those are just minor complaints because this is such a cool design. I've stated before I'm not a fan of a lot of Cybertronian vehicles, but this is perfect. It's like one of those high-end concept cars that are probably never going to actually become real. They're just there to show off what their design team can do. I just see this thing, I get a sense of speed. Where's Michael Bay to film this thing when you need him? The all-new 2005 Cybertron Fireball EX, with the absolute best in icon engineering. Fulfill your need for speed. So what do you do with an amazing space sports car? You turn it into a Winnebago, of course. This is so silly. Kind of love it. Like, hey, we have a cool young new hero for the kids. What should he turn into when he gets his big upgrade? I know, an RV. And I love it. There's some real power behind this RV. I love the glossy flames on the side, the bulk of it. Sure, the pipes don't properly line up, but who cares? Especially cool we got the Winnebago form again, considering we haven't seen a toy of it in a mainline Transformers line since the 80s. Unless you count titanium. And heck, compared to his Kingdom figure, the pipes still don't look right. It's a lot more boxy, and the car looks more like a shoe than a cool sports car.
Your Jordans are fake, Rodimus.
Yeah, it probably has better articulation, but I'm here for the Winnebago. I just like saying the word. So here's the thing. On first glance, Rodimus Prime appears perfect. Possibly better than Prime even. Standing tall and mighty, a bit chunkier than Roddy normally is, but still having an overwhelming power. I also enjoy his off-white gloves. They're kind of like Mickey Mouse gloves. I also actually really like the face sculpt here. It looks like the dude's aged 40 years after becoming Roddy Rodimus Prime Perf. Can't blame him. But if you were watching closely, you might have seen the way he was transformed, and his legs are his shoulders, and it just looks off. Like, it does mean you can raise them quite high, but it looks very unnatural. From certain angles it looks fine, but whenever he's facing straight on, it just looks slightly odd. If the head was pushed ever so slightly back, it probably wouldn't have been a problem. But like this, it just looks weird. Still an overall good figure, but compared to Optimus, it's just kind of lacking. Just like in the show! Also, put your arms away. But we ain't done with this retrospective, because now we must return to Monkey.
That's just Prime.
In comparison to his predecessors, Optimus Primal started as a minor officer and ended as one. He was more so a science and research head for the Maximals. On a research expedition, Primal and his crew encountered renegade Predacons led by someone who took up the name Megatron and ended up on prehistoric Earth. Now, finding himself suddenly thrust into combat, boy, a lot of Primes have this happen to them, don't they? Primal and his crew take forms of Earth animals in order to fend off the Predacons. Later, Primal gets an upgraded form which looks really ugly but has a surfing monkey mode, which is amazing. And even further down the line, he merges his spark with Optimus Primes to become Optimal Optimus. A gargantuan robot with an impressive ape form, a not that great jet form, and a crap motorcycle form. In comparison to the other two, Primal is more akin to a young managerial type. He's smart, but a little looser, making a lot of snarks and quips, but still very capable. He's a little more aggressive than Optimus, but ultimately can join in the fun, ultimately being a great friend to his crew. Until Beast Machines, when he was turned into a religious zealot and forced his friends to take part. So here we have Optimus Primal, and yeah, he ain't great. This is definitely the weakest core figure. That backpack, man. Orion Pax has nothing on that. Bro is absolutely ready to go trekking with his pals. There's also the styling of it. Considering what he turns into, it does make sense, but it just doesn't look right. Especially compared to what we know Primal is supposed to look like. Not helping matters is that he doesn't even turn into his base gorilla mode. One of the simplest transformations ever put into a Transformer show. The articulation is as good as the other figures, but he doesn't have the genuinely good figure quality of Hot Rod or the novelty factor of Orion Pack. He's just there. So what does he transform into? And here is Primal's first form, a surfboard. I think you know where this is heading.
I'd shower you with coconut cream pies.
God, look at this ape. This is what the term great ape was made for. He just looks so majestic and proud, with amazing detail on the face and packing some serious primate pectorals. Looking oddly noble compared to his more 90s edge face on the original toy. And of course, he got a surfboard. So that is great and all, but at least his back pretty empty. Except, you know how I said Primal had a big backpack? Well, now he has become the backpack. It is pretty cool how multifunctional Primal is as a core figure, even though he himself ain't that great. And now he's rocking some serious muscle. But can a monkey fly? Just stick to the monkey. Yeah, I know Primal's original toy looked like this too, but that doesn't make it good. It doesn't matter how much you add on to him, he's still a tummy time transformer, dang it. So far we have a crap core figure, a fun monkey mode, and an awful jet. Can we redeem ourselves in the final robot mode?
Here we go. We're finally here. Performing for you. If you know the words, you can join in too. Put your hands together if you want to clap. As we take you through this monkey rap. D.K. Donkey Kong. He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. He's finally back to kick some tail. His coconut gun can fire in spurts. If he shoots ya, it's gonna hurt.
Apparently, yes! This robot form, man, the final form of Optimal Optimus is spectacular. Standing strong and mighty, all sorts of bright orange, blues, and silver, he really feels the closest we've come to that Optimal Optimus model we saw in the original show. The original toy is cool, but he's a bit of a wibbly-wobbly clunker. This is smooth and clean with the best articulation so far. Head, full legs, full arms, waist pivot, wrist, and even ankle pivots, thumb, and finger articulation. This is not a masterpiece figure, by the way. This is just a standard retail leader class figure. It's the best robot mode of the bunch, and bear in mind, the other two weren't half bad. But the sheer fact you can pose this guy doing anything is just incredible. It even has the Matrix of Leadership, which I don't think he ever interacted with in the show. Sure, the jet mode ain't great, and it lacks the motorbike mode, but if you're really concerned about those, you can pick up his titanium figure. This is just a majestic robot mode, and more than makes up for the other shortcomings. So there we go, all three Evolution Prime figures. Overall, there's not a bad figure of the bunch, and it's hard to choose favorites. Optimus, I feel, is the most representative of the character. Rodimus definitely has the best vehicle and core figure, while Primal definitely has the best robot. You guys can go ahead and debate in the comments, and please subscribe. But for me, I have a hard time choosing. In fact, I'm kind of sad this was it for the unique evolution gimmick. There weren't even any Decepticon figures unless you count evil repaints, which you definitely shouldn't. God, I hate Nemesis Prime. Honestly, I wish this line went beyond these figures. I would love to have seen how a Megatron would have worked. Heck, there was actually a poll for these figures to decide who would have been made into one, and Megatron was even in there. Would he have been a laser gun that turned into a tank? Would he have turned into Super Megatron? Galvatron? I have so many questions. Even more frustrating, you know who else was in that poll? Starsaber and Deathsaurus. We could have had affordable figures of those two several years before their HasLab campaigns. Heck, Star Saber is already one of those kind of figures with how his transformation works. This is just such a wonderful gimmick that I feel hasn't been used to its fullest potential. And don't get me wrong, I am glad for the figures we got later from HasLab, but I just think there's a lot more you can do with this. I think this should be brought back. It's fun, it's inventive, and a great way of getting 2 figures for the price of 1. Though I could live without the RC figure because I just know her core figure would have been Daniel. So overall, while they have their flaws, I do adore the Evolution Leader figures overall. They get 4.5 Matrix of Leaderships out of 5. But which is my favorite? They have so many strong elements that we'd have to really go into.
Everybody, surf's up!
Okay, so a quick little story time. My younger sister once got a Revenge of the Fallen Leader Class Optimus Prime for Christmas. I want to say in 2010. Really cool toy, but I had the job of transforming that thing, and it was an absolute hell to transform. It was fiddly, awkward, and just a nightmare. The box said ages 5 and up? That's insane. It was like a masterpiece figure. So after that, I've had a bit of a fear of movie Optimus Prime figures, especially the bigger ones. Obviously that fear has died, but could you blame me? That was the Optimus Prime that ruined Christmas. And with that said, here's a bootleg of the figure. Why am I doing this to myself? Yep, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the world of Shide Robot Classic Edition, a full-blown knockoff of movie Optimus Prime. It's apparently the Classic Edition with 3D super deformation. This thing is indeed deformed, but we'll get to that. Now, to be fair, Shide in Chinese does mean make or change, so the name is Changeable Robot. But I'm gonna call this thing Shite Robot because it feels only appropriate. On the box, you have a graphic of what appears to be a weirdly mutant version of Optimus Prime's Age of Extinction look. And given that design sucks too, this is ostensibly a mutation of a mutation. On the back of the box, there's no story blurbs, no flavor text. It just tells us that it's Optimus Prime, in case you didn't know already. It shows a knockoff Bumblebee that kinda looks like his look in Reactivate actually. It also implies this not Bumblebee is a second mode. Classy. Also, I was wrong. This isn't a knockoff of Revenge of the Fallen Prime. This is Revenge Og the Fallen. Completely different. We also have the instructions to change him on the bottom, which, given the original figure had roughly 26 steps, cutting it down by half is not getting me hopeful. I tried to find the origin of the toy, but I couldn't find any information on it compared to the bootleg Nendoroids, so they are covering their tracks a lot more effectively. I did find some images of their Bumblebee ripoff, which is very much a clone of Ultimate Bumblebee from the 2007 toy line. Ugh, I'm putting off opening the figure as much as I can. Let's open this. Yeah, so when you first open this figure, it smells like absolute death. It reeks of metallic chemicals, which implies something very not good. So looking at this thing out of the box, it's a remarkably loyal mold in many regards. Most people would see this and probably wouldn't second guess it until you look at that face. Those eyes, man. Rather than give the figure any kind of proper eyes, they've given him these piercing silver ball eyes. It's a shame because the rest of the head sculpt ain't bad, but oh god, feeling this thing is a different story. This thing feels like it'll break at any moment. So many pieces feel so stiff and like they're about to crunch, or there are pieces that feel so loose like the wheel, whereas in the original toy they snapped into place. Also, his back panels are so thin, he's kinda got light piping in them now. Also, oddly, his arms seem to have been folded into an armor mode, whereas they folded up on the original. Also, his swords are rotatable, whereas on the original they were spring-loaded. Also, these feet are awful. Optimus no longer has his grippers, so he just barely stands up, which, given how thin the plastic is on him, a gust of wind will make him collapse. Also, the original voice gimmick has been gutted, so the tab that comes out no longer does anything. And the chest's original Mecha Life movement doesn't exist anymore. In fact, when I first moved this thing about, his chest popped out and I can't get it back into place. So now he's got one hell of a pair of boobies. There is articulation on this figure, but it's strange. The head articulation works well, but the arms feel weirdly loose. The slightest movement pulls the arms out, and the hands technically rotate, but due to the armor on his arms, they don't rotate all that well. The legs can rotate as well, but they feel weirdly stiff in comparison. Like it feels like you're moving them through molasses. You do have ankle pivots, technically, but with this flat-footed freak, it doesn't matter. Especially because, again, moving him around just feels disgusting, and with that smell, I feel like something is rubbing off on my fingers. I just hate handling this thing. Also, parts that were originally part of the figure or very easily attached are just left as accessories out of the box. They took one of the best engineered figures ever and made him a parts former. On a side note, he does come with a knockoff of his Voyager MechTech gun from Dark of the Moon. It's actually a pretty cool gun, all things considered. I might actually keep this. There we go, found a use for this toxic cretin. It's just a shame this figure has no way to actually hold it. It's really irritating because the original Fallen Prime is a great figure despite its wonky transformation. It still remains the most loved mainline Optimus toy from the movies, and bear in mind, there are some heavy hitters in that category, all of which are easy to find. This thing, however, is a piece of crap and definitely shouldn't be handled by kids, but would shatter as soon as they got it, leaving behind a pool of toxic shards, like it had gold plastic syndrome. I gotta transform this thing, don't I? Oh boy, here we go. Okay, let's see here. Okay. Apparently that's just it. That's the step. Oh, these things snapped. Fun. Come on. Oh, there we are. You're doing it, robot. Oh god, it feels like it's gonna break. Oh, a piece broke off. That's great. That's great. This thing is a mutant. It's not a toy. It's a mutation. Oh! I think I kind of snapped it into place. Oh my god! I might actually be able to transform it. No one believed in you, but I do. God, this thing's gonna. This bit. Where does it go? Oh, and there's that. That went. On the plus side, the montage I'm gonna make of me in pain is going to no doubt get this video to 8 minutes, so I can put in mid-roll ads. You know, there are like connectors, but there's like no clearance for any of them. And you do one thing, it pings off. You do another thing, it pings off. Yeah, no. Okay, so of all the things they thought to make, like, they did think ahead to make like a connector. I got it connected. Oh my god. And everything is just like falling apart again. And yep. Why am I doing this to myself? And the entire roof came off just now. Oh, there we go. This transformation is awful. I'm actually surprised I managed to. Everything feels like it's gonna snap off. Everything feels like it's popping out. Nothing connects well. It's awful. You basically have to force everything together. It feels like you're breaking him. Not even the truck is good. Look, the back set of wheels, because you can't plug them in, are just doing this. They're just flopping about like nobody's business. I've worked with plenty of awkward to transform figures before, whether it's due to the material, step, or size, but they never felt like they were going to snap or destroy themselves. This guy, I feel nothing but pure misery with transforming him. Like, how do you do that? The original toy had an already infamously tough transformation, and this just makes it so much worse. What a wretched thing. I've reviewed bad figures before, but this, nah. This is so far the worst I've ever looked at. The only thing it has going for it is the fact that it's roughly the same size and the paint is okay, I guess? Actually, no, I don't even think the paint is good because I think I've just been poisoned breathing near this thing for too long. I'm giving this thing 0.5 out of 5 made in China labels. Just an absolute mess. So tell me, do you have any experiences with knockoff figures? What were they like? Let me know in the comments. Please subscribe, and if you'll excuse me, I can't even keep this thing in my house. You guys ever have a hot take, or like a take that you know is going to be controversial or outright despised, but it's just eating you away? Like you're watching a really crap movie and it's just burning inside about how much it sucks, but everyone else had a fun time, and am I going to be the jerk that ruins their fun? You know what I mean, that kind of feeling's the worst. So with that being said, G1 Devastator kind of sucks ass. Devastator. He's one of the absolute icons from G1, isn't he? Like, even if you're not super well read on Transformers, people know him immediately. He's the big guy made out of smaller guys. He can stand alongside all the other classics like Optimus Prime, Megatron, Billy, Wally, and the one who had cancer. I mean, he's 6 toys in one. What's not to love? Though I gotta say, I'm not as super into combiners as I thought I'd be for Transformers, even though I should love them. I'm a huge fan of the Megazords from Power Rangers or Voltron. I even own a few, and those are a similar concept, so why am I not as into Transformers doing it? By the way, whenever there's a robot made of smaller robots in fiction, my dad calls them a Megazord, regardless of if it's Power Rangers or not. I kind of love that. Anyways, I think it's because, from my experience, a lot of Transformers combiners tend to be a bit clunky looking. You compare it to how a lot of Megazords look, there usually is a certain design language throughout, something that links them together and results in a cleaner design. A lot of Transformers combiners tend to look like, well, just a bunch of robots glued together, and even if they have a proper theming and design language, that doesn't guarantee quality. But I get it. I get the appeal. And when a combiner works out, they could be some of the best Transformers out there. Leo Kaiser, Tidal Wave, Predaking, Movie Devastator, both big and small. Love them. So it's interesting to have Devastator here, the one that started it all, and it's so frustrating. Let's just dive right in. So here are the Constructicons themselves. We got Scrapper, Long Haul, Bone Crusher, not that one, Scavenger, Hook starring Robin Williams, and of course, and as individual figures, they're adorable. G1 figures weren't the most articulated or detailed, but come on, these guys are cute. Particularly love Bone Crusher's goofy tank tread feet. These guys are great for forming just little backup soldiers for the Decepticon armies. Also, this here is the G2 version of Devastator, which makes him bright yellow instead of green, and gives him tattoos so he can remind you what side he fights on. Though weirdly, the set I got with him has his original G1 fist, which has his rocket punch gimmick intact, whereas G2 removed that. I don't know what's more confusing, that they replaced it, or the fact that G2 actually took away a crazy gimmick. Articulation is limited, but serviceable for the time period. I can't complain too much, given these guys were probably, what, $5, $6 at the time? And the transformations, par for the course for G1, are nice and simple, forming cute little construction vehicles easily. They kind of remind me of miniature Tonka trucks. And all their bits move about too. Spinning wheels, movable shovels, spinnable mixers, dumpable dumps, and a spinning crane. Just pretend the hook isn't missing. So all in all, cute robots and good vehicles. This by itself would have been really good at the time. So let's get the big robot out. Oh, but first we need these. Yeah, Devastator is a bit of a parts former, and I know this is still the early days of combiners and Transformers in general. Even the Combiner Wars version kind of has this, but it's kind of a pain to me, especially because these bits could easily get lost, making finding one secondhand all the harder. Luckily, the arms and legs are transformed pretty simply. I quite like how Payloader's arms act as stilts for the robot. Bro's handstand is keeping the robot alive, and I love they kept that for Combiner Wars. But then we get to the body, which, okay, yeah, it's cool the crane breaks apart to form the chest, but when you attach the robot head, and I do use attach very loosely, you slide it on and there's nothing to grip onto it. No tabs, no pegs, nothing. It's purely friction with his smooth plastic. And given the arms attached to the chest, in essence, if you bend him forward ever so slightly, his entire chest and arms can come crashing down. The super wing looks like it would help keep it in place, but no, that comes crashing down too. But here he is, the man himself, and on just looking at him, he's certainly charming in a lot of ways. He is double the size of a lot of Transformers of the time, and compared to a lot of other combiners, the fact that his pieces are so uniform in color and aesthetic actually does give him a surprisingly solid shape and silhouette. Plus his hand has this kick spring-launched fist gimmick that I just adore. The neck is articulated to go back and forth, although it has a tendency to lean forward, probably due to age. The legs aren't articulated at all, but I can forgive that as that wasn't uncommon in other Transformers toys. Just looking at this guy, there is a lot to love. Devastator himself is a great design, and one that deserves to keep coming back. Transformers are not just for looking, and Devastator, when you actually mess with him, it's like a dominoes of failure. His stupid cod piece isn't actually attached to him, it's hanging in the air like a loincloth, meaning if you hold him by the waist, there's a high chance of it pinging off. Not that I'd recommend grabbing him because the slightest bit of pressure can result in the entire chest and arm arrangement falling over. And given that this big bastard is extremely top heavy with not enough weight at the back, the slightest movement can set him off. You try to push him into some kind of pose, he starts falling out. You try to readjust, and his stupid crotch plate pings off. You attach that, he starts falling apart again. You reattach him, and an arm pings off. Do you see where I'm going with this? Devastator is no fun to play around with or pose, because he'll break apart at the slightest bit of pressure, like my teenage years. Good lord, I can't imagine how this must have been for a kid in the 80s. And I know the plastic ages and some joints wear out, but this is a case where some design changes would go a long way. Like a hole here and a tab here would have made a world of difference. It wouldn't have even changed much. What makes it even worse is they keep re-releasing G1 Devastator with almost completely unchanged mechanics, usually with just a paint job. Nothing to actually fix this thing to make it more stable. Nothing to fix the big issues, especially infuriating given that there are plenty of cases of re-releases of other figures fixing massive problems. With the recently launched Missing Link series, we got that awesome re-release of G1 Optimus with revamped articulation that was still loyal to the toy from the 80s. Wouldn't that be great for Devastator here? Instead of just, ooh, now he's colored like a Tonka truck. $90, please. I think that's what makes Devastator here all the more frustrating for me. The potential is there for something great, and even during the 80s, there was better. They had started to make big combining robots in Japan with the excellent DX Chojokin figures Bandai was making for Super Sentai, which sure were bigger and didn't have another robot they had to turn into, but they were a lot more stable compared to this big oaf. And I'm at least glad Devastator figures don't end with this giant glass cannon. Devastator, being as famous as he is, has been a big favorite for third-party figures, knockoffs, and official figures over the years. So there's no shortage of Devastators out there, including the recently announced Studio Series figures. Doesn't matter if it's classics, Combiner Wars, the upcoming Studio Series, movie Devastator, or a figure from one of the dozens of third-party companies. If you're looking to get your own Devastator, please ignore all the re-releases of the G1 toy unless they fix the friggin' issues with stability. I don't know what to think in the end. I'm giving this thing 2 Marvel vs. Capcom Infinites out of 5. It's functional, I guess, and on first glance appears to be what I want, but the more you play with it, the worse it gets. And that's the thing, I don't want to just look at a Transformer. I want to play with him too. How am I supposed to do stop motion with him? Wow, I found a pretty nice little collectible shop. Even found a good deal on this Transformer figure. Shame so much of it is taken up by those frickin' Funko Pops. Would you like to join our big PP Power Up Rewards program? Nope. Alright, let's... Hey, when did that shelf get there? And wait, when did it all become Funko Pops? Miss, what's going on? Ah!
Father, help me.
Ah! It's the Funko Popcalypse, Fuckocalypse, I gotta get out of here! Funko frickin' Pops. If you frequent any kind of collectible store or any kind of toy store or any kind of gaming store or, you know what, just any kind of store, you've probably seen an entire shelf for these things, or maybe even a wall for them. There are a series of collectible figurines of various pop culture characters. Oh, did I say various? I mean practically all of them. Films, TV shows, other toys, anime, video games, other advertising characters. You want them? They have them, I guess. So if you needed to fulfill your obsession so much with a generic figure, bam, they're your guys, I guess. Now, Funko have been around for a long time, making a lot of different pop culture memorabilia, bobbleheads, little figures, lunchboxes, that kind of thing. But in the early 2010s, they launched Funko Pops, their attempt at the pop culture super deformed figurine market. And regrettably, they were a big hit and are still going to this day, getting a video game just this year, which is apparently great. And even reportedly a movie, apparently. Because they think they're the Lego movie, just without the emphasis on imagination and creativity that Lego as a brand emphasizes, whereas the only real message of Funko as a brand is consume! Yeah, you could tell I'm not a fan, so I'm going into this bias. But I really hate these things. This is something of a video essay, I guess. It's just not gonna be 3 hours long. And I'm not gonna devolve into a rant against YouTubers I don't like either. But just so you know, guys, Stinky Blue Rat is problematic because he's not actually stinky. He's lying to his audience. I'm just gonna give my reasons why I just despise the Funko Pop brand and why I just think they're overall bad for collecting culture in general. Now, if you feel like these things, that's fine. I'm not gonna call you out on my twitter.com or whatever, but please just hear me out. Reason 1. They're everywhere. I know this one sounds a bit redundant, like, yeah, they're popular. No duh, they'd be everywhere. But practically anywhere you can buy toys, they're there. But they just take up so much shelf space. Like, there are 2 GameStops in driving distance near me, and both have an entire wall space dedicated to Funko Pops. And none dedicated to the PlayStation 5. This is absolutely true. The PS5 games for both shops just occupied a corner of the PS4 shelf. Jokes about the PS5 having no games aside, I guess we had to make room for some of those giant poster Funko Pops, because nothing like taking an iconic depiction of a character and sucking away all semblance of personality or dynamicism. He's not even shaking the car! Not helping matters is they make Funko Pops for everything. Like, almost everything. And okay, again, in some regards, Funko Pops are sometimes the only thing available if you want a figure of something you love. But please, please have some standards, people. Like, who would buy these at this point? Who the hell wants a Funko Pop of Laura Palmer's corpse? Or someone from Workaholics? Or Will Smith's character from Bright? Yeah, I really want a figure from a Max Landis movie. Oh, don't know who Max Landis is? Here you go. Part 2. You ugly. Okay, since I brought up that Bright Funko Pop, it honestly shows an inherent problem with Funko Pops. They're just not aesthetically pleasing. They're most of the time just so bland. Sometimes to the point where they're so minimally featured, you can't tell who they are. Like, no joke, until I saw the box, I thought this was a figure of Al Powell from Die Hard. And at least that one is arguably on me. See this one? Recognize him? That is Elliot Anderson from Mr. Robot. How about this lad? Obviously, he's that HR manager who criticizes you for being on your phone while playing Candy Crush, right? Nope, that's apparently Ryan Howard from The Office. Well, how about this guy? Well, with his hair and chunk, he's John Goodman, right? From Roseanne? No? How is that? That is apparently Pam from Modern Family. See, a figure is like a caricature. It has to take the most recognizable aspects of the subject matter and somehow take those traits, shrink them down, and simplify them, and still make them recognizable. But Funko Pops take whatever individuality they may have and take it away until all that's left is a soulless, bubblegum-eyed husk. But they're not only bland, there are a lot of Funko Pops that are just flat out horrid to look at for a number of reasons. From the weird square motif making so that the figures are misshapen, or the horrific eyes that make the characters soulless husks. If you stare into the abyss stares back. And the sad thing is, there are some actually decent Funko Pops out there. Typically, it's the one where the square head or black eyes, actually makes sense. Gurr actually looks perfect though, given I think he single-handedly made Hot Topic a big chain where these things occupy yet more shelf space. They basically had to get him right. And Stitch actually looks really good too because, hey, big black eyes. Probably why they made a million versions of him. So frustrating because they can do better, but they just don't. Which leads me to...
competition!
In the world of semi-generic pop culture figurines, these things aren't alone. There's stuff like Good Smiles Nendoroids, QMX's Q-Figs, Super 7's reaction figures, and to an extent, U2s. All of them, quite frankly, do a lot of what Funko is trying to do, just a lot better. Q-Figs have custom sculpts each time, with enough posing and detail that allow the characters to not only look cute, but actually be distinct. Nendoroids are not only adorable, they come with all sorts of fun accessories, interchangeable limbs and faces, so that you could pose them however you'd like. You could even do stop motion. Reaction figures may not be everyone's cup of tea, given their whole motif is aiming for the late 70s, early 80s Star Wars action figure look, but at least they're articulated and you can tell who they're supposed to be just from looking at them. And while I'm not the biggest fan of U2's weird closed emoticon eye motif, they at least have more detailing so you can tell who the characters are supposed to be, and lately have been scaling back the motif in pretty subtle ways. I didn't even know I had U2's eyes as my eye highlights until recently. And all the ones I mentioned are just the big names. There are so many smaller companies doing their own similarly priced items. From blind bags to super deformed figures to model kits, in a lineup with all of these, Funkos certainly do look like the worst choice, don't they? Heck, Funko Pops are even the worst options in their own company, because Funko do a range of blind boxes with mystery minis, and all of them look better than their higher priced siblings. I actually have the mystery minifigure of Tron, and you know what? It's pretty dang good. Nice pose, immediately recognizable, and the style is alright. It just astonishes me how a company can have a really nice minifigure of the Iron Giant like this, and then have this. Also, do not claim the Iron Giant is from Ready Player One. I will smite you!
Virgin.
This one is going to come across a bit mean and maybe even a little contradictory towards my message at the beginning about how I'm not trying to judge people for getting these things, but hear me out. There is a culture with these things, and it's not a good one. You compare collectors for all sorts of merchandise and toys. They'll try and frame them the best way they can, as visually pleasing as possible, doing all sorts of fun photos with these characters. I see so many people doing wacky scenarios with their Transformers alone or doing stop motion with them. It's wonderful. Funko Pops, you just plop them down and that's it. They aren't posed in a way that makes them stand out. They're just there. They're there to occupy shelf space. In fact, they're almost tailor-made to be displayed only in their boxes, given they're roughly the same size. And hey, they're perfectly flat. Might as well stack them. Just a wall of these damn things. Just consume the merchandise, plebeian. And consume they do with Funko Pop collections. It's giant walls of these things, all unopened, all staring into your soul. But you gotta spread them around your house. Put them in your bathroom even, because you really need to have Steven Universe staring directly at you while you Oh, but you don't want him to be alone. Better get an acrylic shelf that openly says it's for Funko Pops that I found while writing this. I hate everything. There's nothing to these things than just brand. Love that brand. Like, I've seen a lot of videos of people displaying their odd collections, and with a lot of them, they seem genuinely enthusiastic and trying to display all that they have, all that they find in fun and creative ways. Whether it be action figures, or plushies, or even 1940s shaving memorabilia. I don't give a crap about Burma Shave, but this guy clearly loves it and wants you to feel the love for it. But I watched the video of the guy with the largest Funko Pop collection ever, and on top of them wall to wall just blending in, doesn't matter if they're the rare ones or not. However, something he says here stuck out to me.
Why do I love Funko Pops? Well, I guess it's because I love pop culture. And if there's anything that epitomizes pop culture, it's Funko Pops, whether it be TV, movies, wrestling.
Look, I don't want to put the guy down, especially when he's put no doubt a ton of money into them. But that feels like something an advertising executive would say. They don't actually say anything. They just express the brand. They express pop culture. And yeah, I know plenty of figures and toys are often just representing a brand, but they can also do a lot to express something about the character. Hell, sometimes I may get a figure for a show or movie I don't know much about, but the figure speaks to me. See this? This is Origami Cyclone from the anime Tiger and Bunny. I didn't know anything about the show when I bought it, but through an amazing design and great posability, it popped out to me, and I'm happy to have it. See this? This is the character Arceus Ne from Bat. I have no idea what Bat is even about, but it has such a great pose and flowing cape, I had to get it. Also, she's pretty hot. And hell, with buying a statue just because it's a sexy girl, at least you feel an attachment to a character enough you want to lust after them. Buying Funko Pops for the sake of the brand and keeping up with pop culture as this vague entity is the epitome of empty vanity. Looking at Funko Pop group chats and all the memes and jokes are about nothing but buying them and finding the rare ones, like the worst stereotypes of NFT collectors, whereas Gundam collectors are cracking all sorts of oddball jokes with them. I think that's why there are tons of jokes and memes about Funko Pop collectors themselves, where they're depicted as pathetic perpetual virgins who do nothing but, as I joked in the beginning, consume the brand. Granted, a lot of it is exaggeration, but what else is there to Funko Pop collectors? That Burma Shave guy isn't just getting Burma Shave memorabilia for the brand. He's doing it to evoke 1940s and 50s nostalgia, which is a very evocative, comforting era for a lot of Americans. There are plenty of people whose collection can actually say something about them. There are plenty of people who see their collections as a reflection of them and want to frame it as nicely as possible so that it reflects their interests and, to an extent, themselves as best as it can.
I remember getting my first system at around the age of 8. I remember when this game came in, the Conic basketball game, it was half broken and I took it apart and I was able to fix it to the point that I could play the game. And I loved it. I played it all the time. But just the fact that we weren't able to purchase games new and I had to take them apart to fix them, it just, I was fine with that. And it drove me to become an electrical engineer.
To put things in perspective, I've been to plenty of collector stores for a variety of things, whether it be sports, comic books, plush, or more retro toys. And usually what they'll do is display their items in an interesting way, have some kind of evocative music for what they're selling, or some art, or some photos to really drive home this is a haven for their fans. At a mall where I had a job interview, I opted to look around a bit and found this collectible shop, which was almost nothing but wall-to-wall Funko Pops. This is dystopian. 2 stores wide, no interesting displays, no color, no art. All there is product. It's enough to turn a sane man into Ted Kaczynski. If only there was a Funko Pop for that! There you go. That's my probably too long rant about why I hate Funko Pop. I know I'm not the only person who's made a video like this. Stuart Ashens has made fun of them numerous times. I Hate Everything did a video 5 years ago. Munahar did one 2 years ago. But that's the thing. These things continue to be a plague on collectibles and toys. Funko relatively recently dumped $30 million worth of Funko Pops at landfill. Such a miserable sight. And shows that not even the company themselves think they're worth anything, value-wise or even emotionally. It's just depressing. And I know these things are probably not going away anytime soon. They haven't had a huge crash like Beanie Babies. But the thing is, Beanie Babies are inherently charming toys for young children. Simple, affordable, and cute. People wrongly think they went away after their initial boom, but they've survived to this day, doing other styles, shapes, and licenses that are really charming. I still see people collecting Beanie Babies. And yeah, they're long past the days of the home shopping network displaying them, but they have a charm and interesting story with their boom and bust. There's nothing to Funko Pops. All I see are void-eyed biscuit heads wanting me to consume my brand slop, and I want no part in that. Guess I'll ask you now is, let me know in the comments, how do you feel about Funko Pops? And how did this video make you feel? If you like them and your feelings are unchanged about them, good for you. Please tell me about it. I want to know, because... And so we find ourselves at the end of another season of The Uncle Show, so called because YouTube hates the word review. And with that, it's time for another big video. And this time, we're going to a special little blue feller. Possibly my all-time favorite Transformer, Soundwave. What is it with Soundwave that makes him so wonderful? Is it the silver, blue, and yellow color scheme, which is just immediately lovely? Is it his giant Gatling gun on his shoulder that I don't think he ever used in the original show? Is it his sing-songy voice, his personality, or the fact he turns into a tape deck, which the more dated it is, the more immediately charming it is? Who knows? He's a lot like Boba Fett. It's not the extremely outward things he does, it's that he just has a presence that's felt as soon as he's in a scene. So for today, I'm going to be talking about 10 different Soundwaves across different eras of Transformers. Now, just to clarify, these are not all of them. These may not even be the best one. And definitely not in some cases. These are just 10 Soundwaves across 40 years of Transformers. So why don't we start with the original from 1984? Or 2024, because this is a re-release.
Soundwave Superior.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the 40th anniversary of Transformers, we have the original Soundwave. This right here might be the same mold as the original, but there are a couple of differences. For one, there's no stickers like the original, and the original purple color scheme has been swapped to a more tune-accurate blue. I do miss the yellow visor he had on the original toy, though. And his missile launcher doesn't actually shoot missiles, which sucks, but otherwise, this is the original toy. And it must be said, for the time, Soundwave is incredible. I have several G1 figures now, and let me tell you, none of them are as posable as this guy. For 1984, you got head, gun, kinda shoulder, and slight knee articulation. Is it still crazy limited? Oh hell yeah! But when you consider that most other Transformers settled on just arm articulation most of the time, while this guy can sit with his legs splayed out, Soundwave here is practically a masterpiece compared to them. But not one of those. We're saving that for later. And his design is perfectly wide and chunky too. He's like a big old doughboy, but still feels intimidating and full-bodied. He doesn't feel like a robot with bits of car on him. Still looks incredibly clean. And of course, he's got his distinguishing feature, his tapes, which form little animals with Ravage and Laserbeak here. That's 3 Transformers in one pack. Must have been an amazing toy back then, and it's still super charming. It also feels wonderful too, with that chunky plastic and a little bit of die-cast metal in his feet, and his tapes that just feel weighty and nice. Transformation couldn't be simpler. You see in the intro, you know how it goes. It all snaps together. Maybe it's not as smooth as it would be now, like with the joints you gotta click in, but it still feels incredibly good to do so. And the result is this excellent tape player. I love this thing so much. It's got that 80s Japanese electronics aesthetic. Big, bulky, brightly colored plastic with heavy ridging. It's wonderful. And being that it's a Diaclone mold, it has a lot of little things to make it feel more like a tape player. From his volume rocker, to the little headphone jack on one switch, to the fact his guns are stored as batteries inside of his case, to the fact said case has a clip for hooking around your waist so you can pretend you're listening to it on the go. God, this is wonderful! This is one of those figures I can transform all day if I wanted to. It's just that good. It's so simple, fun to mess with, that it feels timeless. I grew up in the early 2000s RID Unicron trilogy and movie eras, where by then there were figures with much better articulation, bigger sizes, etc. But Soundwave feels timeless. Somehow fits right in no matter where he goes. Okay, maybe not everywhere, but you know what I mean. I think it's how Soundwave has been re-released at least 8 times since the original toy, despite his flaws. He always feels welcome. It's true what they say. Soundwave's certainly better than the other ones. Though I guess it is a little frustrating in some cases, like for Classics, where everyone got really solid updates with new articulation, while Soundwave was stuck with his original mold. Well, luckily for him, Soundwave got a brand new figure in the mid-2000s that's still a tape player and heavily G1 inspired. Only problem was, it was a titanium figure. So yeah, the next mold for Soundwave's tape player form was unfortunately titanium. I already reviewed the Optimus Prime from this line, and those darts away, mate. It wasn't very good. Soundwave fares a bit better than him, and I'll start with the positives at least. I can recognize it as Soundwave. The idea of Soundwave is there at least. And there are some touches I actually quite like. I like his more angled V visor, something that works really well on other versions of him. I adore the fact his guns are stored away in his back like a pair of batteries like before. And the gold trim on the outside of his tape door is a much more prominent gold, and I actually quite like the look of it. It draws your attention in, which is good, because it draws you away from... Yeah, let's address that diaper. On top of making him look like he should be posted to Fur Affinity, it's just insanely distracting. His crotch is almost as big as his chest, which I'm sure is great for the ladybots out there, but it just looks horrifying here. And these proportions... What is going on here? Why does he have such tiny arms? What's with these giant legs? Why does he seemingly have no waist? And no, the diaper doesn't count. Not helping matters is the die-cast metal ruining this figure. With Optimus, it was the arms. This time, it's the legs, which you think would work well as die-cast and legs is pretty common. But here, the legs have a kind of piston effect for transforming him, and as a result, he is comically imbalanced at all times. Holy crap, he really is a baby, even toddling around like one. Not helping is the fact his feet are on the edge of his legs rather than on it. There are kinda knee joints on this, and those do help, but essentially means he's gonna be squatting like he's taking a crap at all times. Maybe that's what the diaper is for. And while the rest of the articulation on the upper body is serviceable, other than no upper waist turning, again, the legs let it down because they're too heavy to do any posing. Also, if you move one of them in just the wrong way, you're left with the worst noise ever. The transformation is straightforward enough and easy to figure out. Nothing bad there. And the end result, I will say, is not bad. He's been modernized into a boombox with big ghetto blasting speakers, though they kind of look like those speakers everyone had on their computer in the 90s. I can't fault it though, it's a simple radio and that's all Soundwave needed to be. But man, this figure is such a mess. And like I said, this was one of the first new Soundwave designs of him being a radio since the 80s. But it wasn't the only one that was out at the time.
Our worlds are in danger.
In 2005, Hasbro and Takara brought Soundwave into the world of the Cybertron anime, with a bit of heavy reworking. Instead of being a tape player, he's a plane, and well, just look at him. Isn't he just gorgeous? His original color scheme, loud and proud, but just been Cybertronified. Cybertron was already great for taking already established characters and giving them amazing makeovers with a healthy heaping of sci-fi gubbins, and Soundwave might be one of the most extreme cases of that. I thought Titanium had upped the flashiness of his gold, but Cybertron here makes him look like even more of a peasant, with even more gold and a gold faceplate like he was wearing one of Nelly's grills. Wow, this really is the mid-2000s. Right down to the crazy amount of gimmicks. We have ourselves some light piping, and the Planet Key gimmick of launching a tape, or bomb in this case, and the bombs themselves transform into both his weapons and Laserbeak. This is what was so great about Cybertron. It had gimmicks, but it rarely got in the way of the toy itself. This has the same joint placement as Titanium, but he can actually pull off the poses. And it's traded in his diaper for some kick-ass hooker boots. He's just so... oh, what do the kids say these days? Oh yeah, vagina-y. Transformation is a little clunky. Just doesn't fit quite as well as it could be, though I do love smacking his body down to form the plane. And this plane, oh, I love it so much. It's a sci-fi version of one of those Nighthawk stealth planes, which doesn't that make way too much sense for Soundwave? He was never the most combative type, he was always doing espionage and communications, and would usually send his pets to combat. So making him the espionagist of espionage vehicles is just perfect for him. And I love the bomb-dropping gimmick of the plane mode. It's so goofy, but I love it. Cybertron Soundwave showed you could do a new mode for Soundwave and pull it off. Yeah, there are plenty of planes in the Decepticons already, but they're all fighter jets or space junk. Soundwave being a stealth plane was the perfect fit for him. Shame they keep making him a car!
Cars?
So even though they already had one of the most perfectly fitting vehicles for Soundwave, they decided no and opted to make him a car. Like, not even a car that makes sense, like a James Bond style car, like a luxurious but not over the top style spy car. No, they make him a big, bulky SUV constantly. And I just can't stand them. But I had to showcase one, so I opted for Cyberverse here. Cyberverse as a show was a fun one, and one of the biggest things it did right was the art direction. On top of the surprisingly good CGI for a web series, almost every design they pull off in this show works. I think it's because they went with a let's take G1 and make it toony approach, in a way that enhances their character traits, but still feels recognizable. I can't really think of a bad design really off the top of my head. Starscream, love it. Grimlock, love it. Windblade, love it. Bumblebee, love it. Swoop, love it, but give me an actual figure instead of this abomination. And Soundwave was one of my favorite designs featured. Still familiar, but with some lovely new touches. I love his oscilloscope shoulders that fluctuated whenever he talked, his even more angular visor, his little radar dish, I love it all. Now, Warrior class Soundwave here you can forgive for certain aspects. After all, this is meant to be cheaper than a deluxe, but it's still unfortunate that his legs are missing the silver featured so prominently on his character. I'll even forgive his hilariously hollow legs here as they're for the transformation. Though it does mark the return of leg piping. Because, to be honest, it's still a pretty functional toy with plenty of articulation in the arms and legs, though sadly none of the waist again or the head, meaning his after workout stretches aren't going to go well. And the gimmick this time around is rather fun. Rather than a Laserbeak cassette, there's a bit of a twist this time when you turn his head. Pow! Laserbeak jump scare. I kinda love it. It's different but comes out with such force.
Oh god, I shouldn't have eaten at Five Guys. Ugh.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Though storing this bird does mean he has a backpack just as big as he is. Though at least this guy can stand up, unlike Schmorky Wave. Transformation is nice and simple. I mean, it is aimed more at kids, so it makes sense. And I do think it is hilarious that Soundwave's head is hidden by the gun. When turned around enough, he's giving off big Energon Ironhide vibes. But here's the problem. It's still a car, and not even a cool one. It's your mom's SUV on your way to pick you up from soccer practice, and admonish you for not playing hard out there even though she wasn't there for most of it, and I don't even like soccer in the first place, and your younger sibling is just staring awkwardly as she yells at you, "Please stop yelling at me, Mom!" It's just so unfitting to the character. Like I said, he wasn't a big combative type. Also, why won't Laserbeak come out the rear? I want him to crap out Laserbeak on his enemies.
Welcome to Earth.
And now we move on to Earthspark, which I have been enjoying quite a bit, but it can be kind of all over the place. Like, the backgrounds are beautifully realistic and rendered, and then you have comic book effects that look really out of place. It's trying to be its own thing, but sometimes feels like a sequel to G1. Some of the humans are realistic but stylized, while others look like Star Wars Rebel characters, and some look like Cocomelon escapees. And the robot designs are even more all over the place, because whereas Cyberverse was what if G1 with Toonish edge, Earthspark wanted to be everything. Some look more akin to G1, some look like they're from Prime. Prime himself has an ugly face. A lot of characters feel recycled from Cyberverse because they wanted to use those molds for the toy line, which they did. There's a robot named Hashtag now. I swear the show is good, and there are some really good designs. Now the toy line, whoo! Earthspark's toy line is pretty dire. As mentioned before, a good chunk of the toy line were remolds from Cyberverse, and very few decent new figures. And they were even more reliant on gimmicks this time around. There are those god-awful ring transformers, and it was so bad. The largest size classes were essentially Voyager figures with a spinning halfway transformation gimmick that also came with figures of the two kids, and it's reminding me a little too much of Kiss players, so this immediately can go die. And unfortunately, the only figure of Soundwave from the show is a crap one-step changer. Oh god. If you've never seen these before, or as it says on the tin, you pull the figure down and boom, it's a robot. But press the button and boom, it's a vehicle. Yay. And they're alright as little fidgety toys, but the fact that this is the only figure of Soundwave in this form is frustrating. Especially because Soundwave was one of the best designs in the show. Recognizable while still being his own guy, with an awesome Viking helmet, a crotch visor, and him turning into a stealth bomber is absolutely perfect form for him. But no, the only figure of this version of him is this unarticulated, stumpy lump. It's especially sad because Cyberverse had some one-step changers that had articulation in the arms, or even extra gimmicks to go with them. Not this guy. So why don't we move on to something less controversial? The movies!
I've come.
I probably mentioned this before, but I weirdly adored the design language in the Bay movies. Something about these very out there busy designs actually really appeals to me. They're just so visceral and off the wall and pretty inventive, while only sometimes looking like the character. Now, Soundwave in Revenge of the Fallen didn't do a crazy amount, only showing off his satellite mode, which honestly is a really clever way of updating him, where he does his communication thing voiced by Frank Welker again, and then violates another satellite in a movie with a surprising amount of humping. But the funny thing is, sometimes the toys got to concept art before the final design, and as a result, we have a Soundwave that's surprisingly a little more loyal to how he normally looks. Obviously, he's still got that signature Bay touch, but the head and color scheme is a little more recognizably Soundwave, with possibly the most angry visor yet. In a movie full of angry characters, Soundwave might be angriest yet. We also get a return of the gold trim surrounding his 3 breasts like he's auditioning for Total Recall. He's also a brawny little guy, only being a deluxe, but look at those shoulders, man. Bro should have been playing for the Chicago Bears, not destroying their city. This is a showcase of where I think the Bay design language is at its strongest. Clearly taking from the originals, but adding a fun, chaotic twist to it. And we also get our first proper missile of the video. Took us long enough. Great thing about Revenge of the Fallen as well is that as a toy line, it has some of the best Transformer toys ever made. Spectacular alt modes, gimmickry, experimental designs, gorgeous detail, and plenty of articulation. But this guy's no different, being seriously posable. Just brimming with play value and still fitting in with even Studio Series figures with all the detail in his face. He can chill with the pack. The transformation is a bit of a pain, it's just a bit fiddly with lots of bits hanging around, but the final results are awesome with surprisingly distinct satellite and jet modes with articulation for them. This is the type of space junk I love, looking genuinely intimidating while still recognizable as a vehicle. A bit of a bummer that the missile doesn't fire out front, but hey, at least he can crap on his enemies like Carwave couldn't. But enough of these weird offshoots. I want a modernized update of the original Soundwave, with great articulation, his cassette bay, all of it. And we got it, but
disappointed!
So, this fella, huh? Transformers Siege in hindsight was an odd series. Like, it had some incredible figures released for it, like Omega Supreme, Shockwave, Ultra Magnus, and more. But it's also the birthplace of Siege Megatron, aka why people hate tank Megatrons these days. And the whole battle damage motif sounded kinda neat at first, but ended up looking rather ugly a lot of the time. And it's there that this lad was introduced with Voyager Soundwave, or rather this is his legacy version which removes the battle damage, so it's superior. So, on first glance, this should be everything I wanted. A modernized update on Soundwave with everything that comes with modern Transformer toys now. The figure is extremely posable, capable of doing so much, and design-wise, it's a phenomenal body. It's what I want a Soundwave to be. Bulky but not cumbersome. Armed to the teeth, it's great. And the head sculpt is the cartoon brought to life just with the glorious return of his yellow visor from the G1 toy with light piping. And even some of the new additions like the little flip-up turrets are kind of a neat addition. But I just can't like the texture on this thing for one. I know that the whole cybery texture was a big thing for the Siege figures and it worked well on some, but others just looked like they had a horrifying skin condition. Have you ever seen some of Pat Lee's art for Transformers where he just adds a lot of random vents and such to the robots, resulting in looking like they have leprosy? That's this guy. He feels like I'll catch something. Also, the color has been made this overly dark purple that to my eyes makes him look almost completely blacked out. So you can't even appreciate all the detailing that's on display. He doesn't even come with any of his tapes. But that's not what angers me the most. You see that backpack? That's a bit different, right? It's clearly not going to be a boombox. Or even a car. So what does he turn into? What in the good name of is that? What the hell is this supposed to be? I know people call the Bayformers a bunch of sci-fi noise, but they're at least something. This is sci-fi lounge music. Just a load of nothing. When I first saw this, I thought it was supposed to be like a laser blaster, kind of like how Siege Shockwave can be held to look like a gun. But no, this is apparently a spaceship. Really? That teeny tiny, smaller than a Lego stud piece there? That's the cockpit apparently. Because Shockwave is being piloted by frickin' ants. It wasn't even a good transformation. It's very fiddly, parts keep pinging off, and due to this thing's awful design, the instructions are actually a bit confusing. I've seen plenty of bad alt modes, but they at least look like something. This is nothing. I've seen plenty of spaceship transformers. I have plenty of spaceship transformers. This is no spaceship. This is just a load of shit. It's so bad, it actively brings down the figure with it. Because no matter what, you're reminded of what this thing turns into. It takes what could have been an amazing figure of Soundwave and actively ruins it. You know what? Enough of this. Fred, get rid of it! Good thing a few years later they fixed them. Now this is what I'm talking about. This is such a massive improvement, it's not even funny. You might notice a couple of changes, but nothing major. Just the shoulders, arms, crotch, legs, back, and even a lot of the torso. It's such a massive fix. Not that the original Siege figure was awful. Okay, it kind of was, but this is just so much cleaner, so much more polished looking. That Siege detailing is gone, and thank goodness. He's got a lot more metal bits, the plastic is much more of a pronounced purple. The only thing I miss really is the yellow visor. I know the red is more cartoon accurate, but I just think that it looked nice. And say goodbye to that bulky backpack. You just don't need it with Soundwave. Though sadly for his front controls, they're this kind of bulky belt now, which doesn't look the best and feels a little bit cheaty for the transformation. Though I do wish they took the chance to up the articulation a bit. The arms feel a bit more limited compared to before, probably because they're accounting for the transformation. There's a bit of a snap with them, which is odd. You can still work with them, but it feels a bit limiting. Also, I do wish they used the chance to put some ankle pivots on, just a bit. But otherwise, this is such an improvement over this. The transformation for Soundwave is good fun. It's that classic split the legs, move the arms around, hide the head, all lovely, no complaint. But the tape player on the other hand, it's fine but not the best. It's still as charming as ever, but compared to other radios we've seen in this video, it's slightly lacking. Like the back is just a complete mess. Come on, that's just unsightly. And that crotch panel just looks ugly jetting out. I feel like it should have been able to sit flush. In fact, there's a hole on his crotch where it should plug in. But nope, just sticking out. It's a fine alt mode, but compared to others, it could have been better. But there's a big redeeming factor. This is a leader class figure despite still being a Voyager. Now I bet you're already going, oh boy, another Voyager upscaled by accessories. But unlike some figures where you just get a trailer and some extra weapons, Soundwave comes with 3 cassettes, essentially meaning he comes with 3 mini Transformers. I know Soundwave normally comes with Laserbeak, it's why I haven't mentioned it too much, but it coming with 3 and one of them essentially being a core class figure really helps this out. Buzzsaw is rather nice being your classic bird cassette, Ravage is okay, the transformation is kind of a pain actually, but Rumble here really brings the package up a notch. Being around core class size, the fact that humanoid Transformer can turn into a cassette is still pretty fun, but of course he comes with laser guns and big old smattering rams to complete the package. And he's impressively posable for his size. These 3 being bundled together really helps this figure out. And again, even if he is $15 extra, he's still leagues above this. But what if he was smaller? Now we come to the little miracle that is War for Cybertron Kingdom Core Class Soundwave. And when you consider when he came out, we had that Starship to deal with, and no, I'm not going to stop making fun of it. This is wonderful. I adore core class figures and Soundwave here is God, I love him. In comparison to the purple leprosy that was all over his Voyager counterpart, this Soundwave opts for a much cleaner look, akin to his look in the cartoon, but there's still a good amount of detail on it to keep it from being visually boring. Features-wise, he packs quite a punch too. The articulation is on ball joints, and other than no waist articulation, he's as good as his larger counterpart. He even comes with his own mini cassette. It doesn't transform, but come on, this is adorable. The transformation's so simple, I was able to figure it out without looking at the manual. It's a near perfect replication of his old toy, just with modern articulation. The only problem is the feet are a little obvious here. I know there's a way to fix them via third-party means, but that's practically nothing. I already adore core figures, and this to me is them at their best. I could transform this thing all day. It's practically a fidget toy. A better fidget toy than the one-step changer, and for the same price. You can't complain in the slightest. It's everything I could want out of a smaller size figure of Soundwave. But it still isn't quite right. If only we had a perfect Soundwave. Something that just perfectly captures everything about him. A masterpiece, if you would.
It's a fucking masterpiece!
In 2013, we first got our hands on Masterpiece Soundwave. Standing as the tallest Soundwave I've showcased so far, I actually bought him around 2014, hence why he might be a bit dusty. Sorry about that. Now, truth be told, I'm not super into Masterpiece figures normally. Like, a lot of them are awesome quality, most of the time. But if I wanted to collect them, I'd have to start all over, and that get really expensive, and oftentimes they feel a little bit over-engineered with some really painful transformations. And with them lately trying to copy the cartoon style, feels a bit redundant because we already have smaller, more affordable versions of them. But this guy, man, just look at him. He's gorgeous. This is probably the most perfectly proportioned Soundwave yet. Perfectly mimicking his cartoon form with a healthy dosing of the original toy's purple for a very distinct look. And even adding some lovely extra details like the gold arrow in the tape player, lovely silver shoulder pads, and these great ridges makes it feel way more like a piece of 80s tech. All with the best posability so far. Truly a capable figure. You also get a return to sensible die-cast metal with the legs, meaning he stands tall no matter what. Unfortunately, his guns are stored directly on his back rather than in his battery compartment, and they don't really like to stay in sometimes. Also, no belt clips. Boo! How am I supposed to pretend this thing's a Walkman now? But those are such small points. This thing just feels so great to pose and is so visually clean and tidy. This is the kind of toy kids in the 80s could only dream of. The transformation is fiddly, but great. Because unlike a lot of other Soundwaves where you can figure out the transformation immediately, here there are a few extra steps to make it work, and it's still really fun. It's a masterpiece figure where I don't need to whip out a manual for. Close to the original, but now instead of click, clunk, done, there are a few extra bits, but still easy to figure out. Compared to some masterpiece figures, I'll happily take it. And I do love this cassette player. It really does fit the Walkman bill so nicely, including an on switch that has a bit of resistance so it actually feels like you're powering it on. Just kidding. There's no actual electrics, but god, it feels so nice. And the buttons on the front can be pressed, but only fast forward and rewind, so your options for music are limited unless you want nothing but Nightcore. It's funny, I started writing this script before I got Leader Legacy Soundwave, and I thought that was going to knock it out of the park. But writing the script and fiddling with this made me realize more and more how good Masterpiece Soundwave is. Look, there are plenty of good-looking Masterpiece figures, but this is the best to me. Loyal to the cartoon, but takes enough inspiration from the original toy to still feel fresh. He's just a masterpiece, no other way of putting it. And there we go. That was 10 Soundwaves across several decades and styles. Some were good, some were bad. But regardless, Soundwave remains one of my favorite Transformers ever. It's funny, across all of these different designs, he still remains remarkably recognizable. Whether he's a clunky but lovable toy from the 80s, a high-end collector's figure, Soundwave remains Soundwave, and Soundwave superior. Except for Transformers Animated. What are you doing there? But let me ask you, which was your favorite Soundwave? Do you have a favorite outside of this bunch? Let me know in the comments, please subscribe, and thank you for watching Season 2 of The Uncle Show. See y'all next time.
Put a tree in your butt.